Hello and welcome to another episode of the DJ Project Criterion Collection. And moving right along, we go to Spine 140, 8.5, directed by Federico Fellini, 1963. Wow, this is 50 years old. Good grief. I remember the first time I saw it, and this was during that initial period where I was exploring cinema, starting at 2003 or so. And when I saw it the first time, the big object lesson I got, and pretty much every filmmaker who has ever seen this film and who lists it as either one of their favorites or one of the or most influential or most important films in their careers will point this out too. The big object lesson I get from this is that vision is an essential condition for being a film director. You have to have the vision in order to do your job. And I still get that object lesson, and this is largely why this film is on my shelf. Revisiting it again, I also found out that it's a job where people will not leave you alone. Guido is someone who gets constantly pestered by anybody and everybody about, oh, what is this film going to be about? What's the shooting schedule going to be like? You know, are you going to choose this actress or not? Because otherwise she's going to go somewhere else. And it's just constantly being pestered. So basically, if you're someone who's not used to having people around you constantly bugging you, it's going to be really irritating. So, so I think that captures that very well. Just the constant pressure that a film director can go through, especially if you achieve a certain level of prominence. Which then gets into Fellini. Now, Fellini and I are still kind of in an ambivalent position. I've not seen all of his films. I've only seen I Toloni and Nights of Gabria and La Dolce Vita, and obviously 8.5. I've not seen Amarcord. I've not seen Satiricon. So I can't really say with confidence that I really love Fellini or I really dislike Fellini. There's some things that, or maybe this is just how his fans recount him or something. I think there's some things that I don't feel exactly drawn to. Usually when I think of Fellini, I think of Circus, and Circus is a very mixed thing with me, anyways. Most of the time, I don't particularly prefer Circus, and so that could be part of the ambivalence, as it were. But I mean, it does not mean that I don't respect. I mean, I certainly respect him as a film director, and I could see why he was important to a lot of people. When you look at the directors that claim Fellini as one of their key influences, and especially Terry Gilliam. It's if you've seen, and certainly based on the films that I've seen of Fellini's, and actually even in revisiting 8.5, I can definitely see how this can be inspiring to Gilliam, and how it influenced his own work. So I can definitely respect him as a director, but just because you can respect their films and you can understand why they're so influential and why they're so important, does not necessarily mean that you automatically like the director or not. I think that's always a separate thing. So for me, I wouldn't call myself the biggest fan of Fellini, but I most certainly respect him. And interestingly, and this is not a film that I go out my way to see regularly. In fact, I can't remember the last time I saw 8.5. And And actually, revisiting it, I ended up liking it more than what I originally was going to think than I originally thought. In other words, I thought that I was not going to like this as much, but then I ended up liking it more than I probably thought I would. Um, in fact, one of the things that I thought I was going to end up doing was I thought I was going to end up comparing Fellini to Cocteau. And as someone who makes films more or less for himself, that he makes the kind of films that he wants to make, and if anybody else likes it, it's coincidental. But I'm starting to see that that's not so much the case. I think Fellini was somebody who was interested in reaching an audience, and that it was important that the audience. So there is a relatability and accessibility to his films, and also even if the films that he's made were personal in some degrees, and 8½, was certainly it was related to something that was actually happening to him at the time. There have been other films that he's made that probably are more personal than this, but certainly he's made the personal investment into the films. But he doesn't wrap. But unlike Otto, he doesn't wrap his films with his own symbolism. It still feels very real and genuine. You may not have the kind of love life or the complicated love life that Guido has, but you can at least understand kind of what he's going through. And especially when it manifests into a particular dream or fantasy or thought that he has, you can understand a bit why he thinks the way he does. There is a kind of bluntness and honesty that you get from Fellini. This is something that Gilliam talked about in the introduction he did for this DVD. His way of introducing the film is he admires that kind of honesty, and it is quite refreshing to see that kind of honesty about what's going on in one's head. But it's in spite of that personal nature, it doesn't feel like you're just looking at someone's personal language, and if you don't get it, then that's your problem. I don't really get that at all. I feel like that there is some degree of relatability, and maybe it's because the dreams are they're still, even if they are fantastical in their own respects, they're not so out of reality that you feel like, okay, this can't possibly happen. I mean, yes, it does have a very famous opening sequence where Guido is in a car and jam-packed traffic, and actually it's a situation where the traffic is not moving at all. There's no motion at all, and he's trapped. And there's this gas that goes into his car, and he's about to suffocate because of this, and he's trying to get out of the car, and eventually he does get out of the car, and then he ends up flying away through the clouds. And then the next shot you see is him. You see his ankle tied to some string, and someone's pulling it down, and then someone is going to pull him down into the sea, presumably, and then he wakes up. So even though what I just described had dream imagery and even a certain dream logic, it wasn't so totally alienating. You could feel that this could actually happen. It certainly happens in the dream world, but it feels relatable. It's not like he's experiencing something completely fantastical that you're not really sure what exactly is happening. So I don't know, it's kind of hard to describe it, but so again, he's not. Yeah, going back to the whole Otto thing, he's not he's not wrapping his film in his own symbolism. It's not like he's speaking in his own language that you have to be him in order to understand. I mean, he did make films with an audience in mind. I guess that's the difference. Whereas Coteau didn't really think that much about the audience. It was more, he was thinking it more for himself. So, but yeah, like I said, it is one of those films where if you are thinking, even if you're not thinking about wanting to make films, but if you certainly want to know what the process can be like, certainly on an emotional level, what it does to one's mental health, and what it can entail, it's definitely worth watching in that regard, and to see that kind of sort of emotional honesty. And it still makes it quite refreshing in a way, even after 50 years. And again, I can't believe it's been 50 years since this film came out. And it's something that I think is still very, very relevant, and still very applicable. So certainly to any and all creative types. So I would definitely recommend it on that level. And again, I was surprised of how much I would end up re-liking this again. Again, I liked the film the first time I saw it, and I knew that the major object lesson was really important and it was worth having. But it's not a film that honestly I don't go to every so often. I don't watch it monthly. I haven't seen this film with a greater frequency as, say, With Nail and I, or Kicking and Screaming, or even Contempt, which is in a somewhat similar vein as far as a film about filmmaking. But I still appreciate it, and now I think looking back on it, I think I'm glad that I still like it. I'm glad that I didn't end up regretting not getting it. So, but yeah, it's a lot of fun, and I think that's probably the other thing is that you do get this sense of fun. And I said earlier that whenever I hear Fellini, I think of circus, and I think it's a bit unfair. I mean, there's some things I don't like about circuses, but in the end, a circus is the good you can extrapolate from a circus is that it's a celebration of life. It's just basking in a moment of spontaneous joy, and Fellini did that very well in his career, and this is why he's loved and admired, certainly amongst film directors. So there you go. Spontaneous fun, all about filmmaking. So, and that's 8.5. And until next time, take care.